Chapter 3. Bill's Tombstone. There were soldiers riding down the road on horses 2 and 2. That is, the horses were 2 and 2, and the men not, because each man was riding one horse and leading another to exercise them. They came from Chatham Barracks. We all drew up in a line outside the churchyard wall and saluted as they went by, though we had not read Toady Lion then. We have since. It is the only decent book I have ever read written by Toady Lion's author. The others are mere piffle, but many people like them. In Sir Toady Lion, the officer salutes the child. There was only a lieutenant with those soldiers, and he did not salute me. He kissed his hands to the girls, and a lot of the soldiers behind kissed theirs too. We waved ours back. Next day we made a Union Jack out of pocket handkerchiefs and part of a red flannel petticoat of the White Mouse's, which she did not want just then, and some blue ribbon we got at the village shop. Then we watched for the soldiers, and after 3 days they went by again, by 2 and 2s as before. It was A1. We waved our flag and we shouted. We gave them 3 cheers. Oswald can shout loudest, so as soon as the first man was level with us, not the advance guard, but the first of the battery, he shouted, 3 cheers for the Queen and the British Army, and we waved the flag and bellowed. Oswald stood on the wall to bellow better, and Denny waved the flag because he was a visitor, and so politeness made us let him enjoy the fat of whatever there was going. The soldiers did not cheer that day. They only grinned and kissed their hands.
The next day we all got up as much like soldiers as we could. H.O. and Noel had tin swords, and we asked Albert's uncle to let us wear some of the real arms that are on the wall in the dining room, and he said yes, if we would clean them up afterwards. But we jolly well cleaned them up first, with Brooks soap and brick dust and vinegar, and the knife polish, invented by the great and immortal Duke of Wellington in his spare time when he was not conquering Napoleon. 3 cheers for our Iron Duke, and with emery paper and wash leather and whitening. Oswald wore a cavalry sabre in its sheath. Alice and the mouse had pistols in their belts, large old flintlocks with bits of red flannel between the flints. Denny had a naval cutlass, a very beautiful blade, and old enough to have been at Trafalgar. I hope it was. The others had French sword bayonets that were used in the Franco-German War. They are very bright when you get them bright, but the sheaths are hard to polish. Each sword bayonet has the name on the blade of the warrior who once wielded it. I wonder where they are now. Perhaps some of them died in the war. Poor chaps. But it is a very long time ago. I should like to be a soldier. It is better than going to the best schools, and to Oxford afterwards, even if it is Balliol you go to. Oswald wanted to go to South Africa for a bugler, but Father would not let him. And it is true that Oswald does not yet know how to bugle, though he can play the infantry advance and the charge and the halt on a penny whistle. Alice taught them to him with the piano, out of the red book Father's cousin had when he was in the Fighting Fifth. Oswald cannot play the retire, and he would scorn to do so. But I suppose a bugler has to play what he is told, no matter how galling to the young boy's proud spirit.
The next day, being thoroughly armed, we put on everything red, white and blue that we could think of. Nightshirts are good for white, and you don't know what you can do with red socks and blue jerseys till you try. And we waited by the churchyard wall for the soldiers. When the advance guard, or whatever you call it of artillery, it's that for infantry, I know, came by, we got ready, and when the first man of the first battery was level with us, Oswald played on his penny whistle the advance and the charge, and then shouted, 3 cheers for the Queen and the British Army. This time they had the guns with them, and every man of the battery cheered too. It was glorious. It made you tremble all over. The girls said it made them want to cry, but no boy would own to this, even if it were true. It is babyish to cry. But it was glorious, and Oswald felt differently to what he ever did before. Then suddenly the officer in front said, "Battery, halt!" And all the soldiers pulled their horses up, and the great guns stopped too. Then the officer said, "Sit at ease," and something else, and the sergeant repeated it, and some of the men got off their horses and lit their pipes, and some sat down on the grass edge of the road, holding their horses' bridles. We could see all of the arms and accoutrements, plain as plain. Then the officer came up to us. We were all standing on the wall that day, except Dora, who had to sit because her foot was bad, but we let her have the 3-edged rapier to wear, and the blunderbuss to hold as well. It has a brass mouth, and is like in Mr. Caldecott's pictures. He was a beautiful man, the officer, like a Viking, very tall and fair, with moustaches very long, and bright blue eyes. He said, "Good morning." So did we. Then he said, "You seem to be a military lot." We said we wished we were. "And patriotic," said he. Alice said she should jolly well think so. Then he said he had noticed us there for several days, and he had halted the battery because he thought we might like to look at the guns. Alas, there are but too few grown-up people so far-seeing and thoughtful as this brave and distinguished officer. We said, "Oh, yes," and then we got off the wall, and that good and noble man showed us the string that moves the detonator and the breech block. When you take it out and carry it away, the gun is in vain to the enemy, even if he takes it. And he let us look down the gun to see the rifling, all clean and shiny, and he showed us the ammunition boxes, but there was nothing in them. He also told us how the gun was unlimbered. This means separating the gun from the ammunition carriage, and how quick it could be done, but he did not make the men do this because they were resting. There were 6 guns. Each had painted on the carriage, in white letters, 15 PR, which the captain told us meant 15-pounder. I should have thought the gun weighed more than 15 pounds, Dora said. It would if it was beef, but I suppose wood and gun are lighter. And the officer explained to her very kindly and patiently that 15 PR meant the gun could throw a shell weighing 15 pounds. When we had told him how jolly it was to see the soldiers go by so often, he said, "You won't see us many more times. We are ordered to the front, and we sail on Tuesday week, and the guns will be painted mud colour, and the men will wear mud colour too, and so shall I." The men looked very nice, though they were not wearing their busbies, but only tommy caps put on all sorts of ways. We were very sorry they were going, but Oswald, as well as others, looked with envy on those who would soon be allowed, being grown up and no nonsense about your education, to go and fight for their queen and country. Then suddenly Alice whispered to Oswald, and he said, "All right, but tell him yourself." So Alice said to the captain, "Will you stop next time you pass?" He said, "I'm afraid I can't promise that." Alice said, "You might. There's a particular reason." He said, "What?" which was a natural remark, not rude as it is with children. Alice said, "We want to give the soldiers a keepsake and will write to ask my father. He is very well off just now. Look here, if we're not on the wall when you come by, don't stop, but if we are, please, please do." The officer pulled his moustache and looked as if he did not know, but at last he said, "Yes," and we were very glad. though but Alice and Oswald knew the dark but pleasant scheme at present fermenting in their youthful nuts. The captain talked a lot to us. At last Noel said, "I think you are like Diarmid of the Golden Collar, but I should like to see your sword out and shining in the sun like burnished silver." The captain laughed and grasped the hilt of his good blade, but Oswald said hurriedly, "Don't! Not yet. We shan't ever have a chance like this. If you'd only show us the pursuing practice. Albert's uncle knows it, but he only does it on an armchair because he hasn't a horse." And that brave and swagger captain did really do it. He rode his horse right into our gate when we opened it, and showed us all the cuts, thrusts and guards. There are 4 of each kind. It was splendid. The morning sun shone on his flashing blade, and his good steed stood with all its legs far apart and stiff on the lawn. Then we opened the paddock gate, and he did it again, while the horse galloped as if upon the bloody battlefield among the fierce foes of his native land, and this was far more ripping still. Then we thanked him very much, and he went away, taking his men with him, and the guns, of course.
Then we wrote to my father, and he said yes, as we knew he would, and next time the soldiers came by, but they had no guns this time, only the captive Arabs of the desert, we had the keepsakes ready in a wheelbarrow, and we were on the churchyard wall. And the bold captain called an immediate halt. Then the girls had the splendid honour and pleasure of giving a pipe and 4 whole ounces of tobacco to each soldier. Then we shook hands with the captain and the sergeant and the corporals, and the girls kissed the captain. I can't think why girls will kiss everybody. And we all cheered for the Queen. It was grand. And I wish my father had been there to see how much you can do with £12 if you order things from the stores. We have never seen those brave soldiers again. I have told you all this to show you how we got so keen about soldiers, and why we sought to aid and abet the poor widow at the White Cottage, in her desolate and oppressedness. Her name was Simpkins, and her cottage was just beyond the churchyard on the other side from our house. On the different military occasions which I have remarked upon, this widow woman stood at her garden gate and looked on, and after the cheering she rubbed her eyes with the apron. Alice noticed this slight but signifying action. We feel quite sure Mrs. Simpkins liked soldiers, and so we felt friendly to her. But when we tried to talk to her, she would not. She told us to go along with us, do, and not bother her. And Oswald, with his usual delicacy and good breeding, made the others do as she said. But we were not to be thus repulsed with impunity. We made complete but cautious inquiries, and found out that the reason she cried when she saw soldiers was that she had only one son, a boy. He was 22, and he had gone to the war last April, so that she thought of him when she saw the soldiers, and that is why she cried. Because when your son is at the wars you always think he is being killed. I don't know why. A great many of them are not. If I had a son at the wars, I should never think he was dead till I heard he was, and perhaps not then, considering everything. After we had found this out, we held a council. Dora said, "We must do something for the soldier's widowed mother." We all agreed, but added, "What?" Alice said, "The gift of money might be deemed an insult by that proud patriotic spirit. Besides, we haven't more than 18p among us." We had put what we had to father's £12 to buy the baccy and pipes. The mouse then said, "Couldn't we make her a flannel petticoat and leave it without a word upon her doorstep?" But every one said, flannel petticoats in this weather, and that was no go. Noel said he would write her a poem, but Oswald had a deep inward feeling that Mrs. Simpkins would not understand poetry. Many people do not. H.O. said, why not sing Rule Britannia under her window after she had gone to bed, like Waits? But no one else thought so. Denny thought we might get up a subscription for her among the wealthy and affluent, but we said again that we knew money would be no balm to the haughty mother of a brave British soldier. What we want, Alice said, is something that will be a good deal of trouble to us and some good to her. A little help is worth a deal of poetry, said Denny. I should not have said that myself. Noel did look sick. What does she do that we can help in? Dora asked. Besides, she won't let us help. H.O. said, she does nothing but work in the garden. At least, if she does anything inside you can't see it, because she keeps the door shut. Then at once we saw. We all agreed to get up the very next day, ere yet the rosy dawn had flushed the east, and have a go at Mrs. Simpkins's garden.
We got up. We really did. But too often, when you mean to, overnight, it seems so silly to do it when you come to waking up in the dewy morn. We crept downstairs with our boots in our hands. Denny is rather unlucky, though a most careful boy. It was he who dropped his boot, and it went blundering down the stairs, echoing like thunderbolts and waking up Albert's uncle. But when we explained to him that we were going to do some gardening, he let us and went back to bed. Everything is very pretty and different in the early morning before people are up. I have been told this is because the shadows go a different way from what they do in the awake part of the day, but I don't know. Noel says the fairies have just finished tidying up then. Anyhow, it all feels quite otherwise. We put on our boots in the porch, and we got our gardening tools, and we went down to the white cottage. It is a nice cottage with a thatched roof, like in the drawing copies you get at girls' schools, and you do the thatch if you can with a BB pencil. If you cannot, you just leave it. It looks just as well somehow when it's mounted and framed. We looked at the garden. It was very neat. Only one patch was coming up thick with weeds. I could see groundsel and chickweed, and others that I did not know. We set to work with a will. We used all our tools, spades, forks, hoes and rakes, and Dora worked with the trowel, sitting down because her foot was hurt. We cleared the weedy patch beautifully, scraping off all the nasty weeds and leaving the nice clean brown dirt. We worked as hard as ever we could, and we were happy, because it was unselfish toil, and no one thought then of putting it in the book of golden deeds, where we had agreed to write down our virtuous actions and the good doings of each other when we happened to notice them. We had just done, and we were looking at the beautiful production of our honest labour, when the cottage door burst open, and the soldier's widowed mother came out like a wild tornado, and her eyes looked like upas trees, death to the beholder. "You wicked, meddlesome, nasty children," she said. "Ain't you got enough of your own good ground to runch up and spoil, but you must come into my little lot?" Some of us were deeply alarmed, but we stood firm. "We have only been weeding your garden," Dora said. "We wanted to do something to help you." "Dratted little busybodies," she said. It was indeed hard, but everyone in Kent says dratted when they are cross. "It's my turnips," she went on, "you've hoed up, and my cabbages. My turnips that my boys sowed afore he went. There, get along with you do, afore I come after you with my broom handle." She did come at us with her broom handle as she spoke, and even the boldest turned and fled. Oswald was even the boldest. "They looked like weeds right enough," he said. And Dickie said, "It all comes of trying to do golden deeds." This was when we were out in the road.
As we went along in a silence full of gloomy remorse, we met the postman. He said, "Here's the letters for the moat," and passed on hastily. He was a bit late. When we came to look through the letters, which were nearly all for Albert's uncle, we found there was a postcard that had got stuck in a magazine wrapper. Alice pulled it out. It was addressed to Mrs. Simpkins. We honourably only looked at the address, although it is allowed by the rules of honourableness to read postcards that come to your house if you like, even if they are not for you. After a heated discussion, Alice and Oswald said they were not afraid, whoever it was, and they retraced their steps, Alice holding the postcard right way up, so that we should not look at the lettery part of it, but only the address. With quick beating heart, but outwardly unmoved, they walked up to the white cottage door. It opened with a bang when we knocked. "Well," Mrs. Simpkins said, and I think she said it what people in books call sourly. Oswald said, "We are very, very sorry we spoiled your turnips, and we will ask my father to try and make it up to you in some way." She muttered something about not wanting to be beholden to anybody. "We came back," Oswald went on, with his always unruffled politeness, "because the postman gave us a postcard in mistake with our letters, and it is addressed to you." "We haven't read it," Alice said quickly. I think she needn't have said that. Of course we hadn't. But perhaps girls know better than we do what women are likely to think you capable of. The soldier's mother took the postcard. She snatched it really, but took is a kind of word considering everything. And she looked at the address a long time. Then she turned it over and read what was on the back. Then she drew her breath in as far as it would go, and caught hold of the doorpost. Her face got awful. It was like the wax face of a dead king I saw once at Madame Tussaud's. Alice understood. She caught hold of the soldier's mother's hand and said, "Oh, no, it's not your boy Bill." And the woman said nothing, but shoved the postcard into Alice's hand, and we both read it. And it was her boy Bill. Alice gave her back the card. She had held on to the woman's hand all the time, and now she squeezed the hand and held it against her face. But she could not say a word because she was crying so. The soldier's mother took the card again, and she pushed Alice away, but it was not an unkind push, and she went in and shut the door. And as Alice and Oswald went down the road, Oswald looked back, and one of the windows of the cottage had a white blind. Afterwards the other windows had too. There were no blinds really to the cottage. It was aprons and things she had pinned up. Alice cried most of the morning, and so did the other girls. We wanted to do something for the soldier's mother, but you can do nothing when people's sons are shot. It is the most dreadful thing to want to do something for people who are unhappy, and not to know what to do.
It was Noel who thought of what we could do at last. He said, "I suppose they don't put up tombstones to soldiers when they die in war, but I mean..." Oswald said, "Of course not." Noel said, "I dare say you'll think it's silly, but I don't care. Don't you think she'd like it if we put up one to him? Not in the churchyard, of course, because we shouldn't be let, but in our garden, just where it joins on to the churchyard." We all thought it was a first-rate idea. This is what we meant to put on the tombstone.
Here lies Bill Simpkins, who died fighting for Queen and country. A faithful son, a son so dear, a soldier brave lies buried here.
Then we remembered that poor brave Bill was really buried far away in the southern hemisphere, if at all, so we altered it to
A soldier brave we weep for here.
Then we looked out a nice flagstone in the stable yard, and we got a cold chisel out of the dentist's toolbox and began. But stone cutting is difficult and dangerous work. Oswald went at it a bit, but he chipped his thumb and it bled so he had to chuck it. Then Dicky tried, and then Denny, but Dicky hammered his finger and Denny took all day over every stroke, so that by tea time we had only done the H and about half the E, and the E was awfully crooked. Oswald chipped his thumb over the H. We looked at it the next morning, and even the most sanguinary of us saw that it was a hopeless task. Then Denny said, "Why not wood and paint?" and he showed us how. We got a board and 2 stumps from the carpenters in the village, and we painted it all white, and when that was dry, Denny did the words on it. It was something like this:
In memory of Bill Simpkins, dead for Queen and country, honour to his name and all other brave soldiers.
We could not get in what we meant to at first, so we had to give up the poetry. We fixed it up when it was dry. We had to dig jolly deep to get the posts to stand up, but the gardener helped us. Then the girls made wreaths of white flowers, roses and Canterbury bells, and lilies and pinks, and sweet peas and daisies, and put them over the posts. And I think if Bill Simpkins had known how sorry we were, he would have been glad. Oswald only hopes, if he falls on the wild battlefield, which is his highest ambition, that somebody will be as sorry about him as he was about Bill. That's all. When all was done, and what flowers there were over from the wreaths scattered under the tombstone between the posts, we wrote a letter to Mrs. Simpkins and said,
Dear Mrs. Simpkins, we are very, very sorry about the turnips and things, and we beg your pardon humbly. We have put up a tombstone to your brave son, and we signed our names.
Alice took the letter. The soldier's mother read it and said something about our oughting to know better than to make fun out of people's troubles with our tombstones and tomfoolery. Alice told me she could not help crying. She said, it's not, dear, dear Mrs. Simpkins, do come with me and see. You don't know how sorry we are about Bill. Do come and see. We can go through the churchyard, and the others have all gone in so as to leave it quiet for you. Do come. And Mrs. Simpkins did. And when she read what we had put up, and Alice told her the verse we had not had room for, she leant against the wall by the grave, the tombstone, and Alice hugged her, and they both cried bitterly. The poor soldier's mother was very, very pleased, and she forgave us about the turnips, and we were friends after that, but she always liked Alice the best. A great many people do, somehow. After that, we used to put fresh flowers every day on Bill's tombstone, and I do believe his mother was pleased, though she got us to move it away from the churchyard edge and put it in a corner of our garden under a laburnum, where people could not see it from the church, but you could from the road, though I think she thought you couldn't. She came every day to look at the new wreaths. When the white flowers gave out, we put coloured, and she liked it just as well.
About a fortnight after the erecting of the tombstone, the girls were putting fresh wreaths on it when a soldier in a red coat came down the road, and he stopped and looked at us. He walked with a stick, and he had a bundle in a blue cotton handkerchief, and one arm in a sling. and he looked again, and he came nearer, and he leaned on the wall so that he could read the black printing on the white paint. And he grinned all over his face, and he said, "Well, I am blessed." And he read it all out in a sort of half-whisper, and when he came to the end where it says, "and all such brave soldiers," he said, "Well, I really am." I suppose he meant he really was blessed. Oswald thought it was like the soldier's cheek, so he said, "I dare say you aren't so very blessed as you think. What's it to do with you anyway, eh, Tommy?" Of course Oswald knew from Kipling that an infantry soldier is called that. The soldier said, "Tommy yourself, young man. That's me." And he pointed to the tombstone. We stood rooted to the spot. Alice spoke first. "Then you're Bill, and you're not dead," she said. "Oh, Bill, I am so glad. Do let me tell your mother." She started running, and so did we all. Bill had to go slowly because of his leg, but I tell you he went as fast as ever he could. We all hammered at the soldier's mother's door and shouted, "Come out! Come out!" And when she opened the door we were going to speak, but she pushed us away and went tearing down the garden path like winking. I never saw a grown-up woman run like it, because she saw Bill coming. She met him at the gate, running right into him, and caught hold of him, and she cried much more than when she thought he was dead. And we all shook his hand and said how glad we were.
The soldier's mother kept hold of him with both hands, and I couldn't help looking at her face. It was like wax that had been painted on both pink cheeks and the eyes shining like candles. And when we had all said how glad we were, she said, "Thank the dear Lord for his mercies," and she took her boy Bill into the cottage and shut the door. We went home and chopped up the tombstone with the wood axe and had a blazing big bonfire and cheered till we could hardly speak. The postcard was a mistake. He was only missing. There was a pipe and a whole pound of tobacco left over from our keepsake to the other soldiers. We gave it to Bill. Father is going to have him for under gardener when his wounds get well. He'll always be a bit lame, so he cannot fight any more.
End of chapter 3.
Chapter 4. The Tower of Mystery.
It was very rough on Dora having her foot bad, but we took it in turns to stay in with her, and she was very decent about it. Daisy was most with her. I do not dislike Daisy, but I wish she had been taught how to play, because Dora is rather like that naturally, and sometimes I have thought that Daisy makes her worse. I talked to Albert's uncle about it one day when the others had gone to church and I did not go because of earache, and he said it came from reading the wrong sort of books partly. She has read Ministering Children, and Anna Ross or The Orphan of Waterloo, and Ready Work for Willing Hands, and Elsie or Like a Little Candle, and even a horrid little blue book about the something or other of little sins. After this conversation Oswald took care she had plenty of the right sort of books to read, and he was surprised and pleased when she got up early one morning to finish Monte Cristo. Oswald felt that he was really being useful to a suffering fellow creature when he gave Daisy books that were not all about being good. A few days after Dora was laid up, Alice called a council of the Wouldbegoods, and Oswald and Dicky attended with darkly clouded brows. Alice had the minute book, which was an exercise book that had not much written in it. She had begun at the other end. I hate doing that myself, because there is so little room at the top compared with right way up. Dora and a sofa had been carried out onto the lawn, and we were on the grass. It was very hot and dry. We had sherbet. Alice read.
Society of the Wouldbegoods. We have not done much. Dicky mended a window, and we got the milk pan out of the moat that dropped through where he mended it. Dora, Oswald, Dicky and me got upset in the moat. This was not goodness. Dora's foot was hurt. We hope to do better next time. Then came Noel's poem. We are the Wouldbegoods Society. We are not good yet, but we mean to try. And if we try, and if we don't succeed, it must mean we are very bad indeed. This sounded so much righter than Noel's poetry generally does, that Oswald said so, and Noel explained that Denny had helped him. He seems to know the right length for lines of poetry. I suppose it comes of learning so much at school, Noel said. Then Oswald proposed that anyone should be allowed to write in the book if they found out anything good that anyone else had done, but not things that were public acts, and nobody was to write about themselves or anything other people told them, only what they found out. After a brief jaw the others agreed, and Oswald felt, not for the first time in his young life, that he would have made a good diplomatic hero to carry dispatches and outwit the other side. For now he had put it out of the minute book's power to be the kind of thing readers of Ministering Children would have wished. And if anyone tells other people any good thing he's done, he is to go to Coventry for the rest of the day. And Denny remarked, we shall do good by stealth and blush to find it shame. After that, nothing was written in the book for some time. I looked about, and so did the others, but I never caught anyone in the act of doing anything extra, although several of the others have told me since of things they did at this time and really wondered nobody had noticed. I think I said before that when you tell a story you cannot tell everything. It would be silly to do it, because ordinary kinds of play are dull to read about, and the only other thing is meals, and to dwell on what you eat is greedy and not like a hero at all. A hero is always contented with a venison pasty and a horn of sack. All the same, the meals were very interesting, with things you do not get at home. Lent pies with custard and currants in them, sausage rolls and fleed cakes and raisin cakes and apple turnovers and honeycomb and syllabubs, besides as much new milk as you cared about, and cream now and then, and cheese always on the table for tea. Father told Mrs. Pettigrew to get what meals she liked, and she got these strange but attractive foods.
In a story about Wouldbegoods, it is not proper to tell of times when only some of us were naughty, so I will pass lightly over the time when Noel got up the kitchen chimney and put 3 bricks and an old starling's nest and about a ton of soot down with him when he fell. They never use the big chimney in the summer, but cook in the wash-house. Nor do I wish to dwell on what H.O. did when he went into the dairy. I do not know what his motive was, but Mrs. Pettigrew said she knew, and she locked him in and said if it was cream he wanted he should have enough, and she wouldn't let him out till tea time. The cat had also got into the dairy for some reason of her own, and when H.O. was tired of whatever he went in for, he poured all the milk into the churn and tried to teach the cat to swim in it. He must have been desperate. The cat did not even try to learn, and H.O. had the scars on his hands for weeks. I do not wish to tell tales of H.O., for he is very young, and whatever he does he always catches it for, but I will just allude to our being told not to eat the greengages in the garden. And we did not. And whatever H.O. did, it was Noel's fault, for Noel told H.O. that greengages would grow again all right if you did not bite as far as the stone, just as wounds are not mortal except when you are pierced through the heart. So the 2 of them bit bites out of every greengage they could reach, and of course the pieces did not grow again. Oswald did not do these things, but then he is older than his brothers. The only thing he did just about then was making a booby trap for Mrs. Pettigrew when she had locked up H.O. in the dairy, and unfortunately it was the day she was going out in her best things, and part of the trap was a can of water. Oswald was not willingly vicious, but it was a light and thoughtless act which he had every reason to be sorry for afterwards. And he is sorry even without those reasons, because he knows it is ungentlemanly to play tricks on women. I remember Mother telling Dora and me when we were little that you ought to be very kind and polite to servants, because they have to work very hard and do not have so many good times as we do. I used to think about Mother more at the Moat House than I did at Blackheath, especially in the garden. She was very fond of flowers, and she used to tell us about the big garden where she used to live. And I remember Dora and I helped her to plant seeds. But it's no use wishing. She would have liked that garden, though. The girls and the white mice did not do anything boldly wicked, though of course they used to borrow Mrs. Pettigrew's needles, which made her very nasty. Needles that are borrowed might just as well be stolen. But I say no more. I have only told you about these things to show the kind of events which occurred on the days I don't tell you about. On the whole, we had an excellent time.
It was on the day that we had the pillow fight that we went for the long walk. Not the pilgrimage, that is another story. We did not mean to have a pillow fight. It is not usual to have them after breakfast, but Oswald had come up to get his knife out of the pocket of his Etons to cut some wire we were making rabbit snares of. It is a very good knife, with a file in it, as well as a corkscrew and other things. And he did not come down at once, because he was detained by having to make an apple pie bed for Dicky. Dicky came up after him to see what we was up to, and when he did see, he buzzed a pillow at Oswald and the fight began. The others, hearing the noise of battle from afar, hastened to the field of action, all except Dora, who couldn't because of being laid up with her foot, and Daisy because she is a little afraid of us still when we are all together. She thinks we are rough. This comes of having only one brother. Well, the fight was a fine one. Alice backed me up, and Noel and H.O. backed Dicky, and Denny heaved a pillow or two, but he cannot shy straight, so I don't know which side he was on. And just as the battle raged most fiercely, Mrs. Pettigrew came in and snatched the pillows away and shook those of the warriors who were small enough for it. She was rough, if you like. She also used language I should have thought she would be above. She said, "Drat you!" and "Drabbit you!" The last is a thing I have never heard said before. She said, "There's no peace of your life with you children. Drat your antics, and that poor dear patient gentleman right underneath with his headache and his handwriting, and you rampaging about over his head like young bull calves. I wonder you haven't more sense, a great girl like you." She said this to Alice, and Alice answered gently, as we are told to do, "I really am awfully sorry. We forgot about the headache. Don't be cross, Mrs. Pettigrew. We didn't mean to. We didn't think." "You never do," she said, and her voice, though grumpy, was no longer violent. "Why on earth you can't take yourselves off for the day, I don't know." We all said, "But may we?" She said, "Of course you may. Now put on your boots and go for a good long walk, and I tell you what, I'll put you up a snack and you can have an egg to your tea to make up for missing your dinner. Now, don't go clattering about the stairs and passages, there's good children. See if you can't be quiet this once, and give the good gentleman a chance with his copying." She went off. Her bark is worse than her bite. She does not understand anything about writing books, though. She thinks Albert's uncle copies things out of printed books when he's really writing new ones. I wonder how she thinks printed books get made first of all. Many servants are like this. She gave us the snack in a basket and sixpence to buy milk with. She said any of the farms would let us have it, only most likely it would be skim. We thanked her politely, and she hurried us out of the front door as if we'd been chickens on a pansy bed. I did not know till after I had left the farm gate open and the hens had got into the garden that these feathered bipeds display great partiality for the young buds of plants of the genus Viola, to which they are extremely destructive. I was told that by the gardener. I looked it up in the gardening book afterwards to be sure he was right. You do learn a lot of things in the country.
We went through the garden as far as the church, and then we rested a bit in the porch, and just looked into the basket to see what the snack was. It proved to be sausage rolls and queen cakes, and a Lent pie in a round tin dish, and some hard-boiled eggs and some apples. We all ate the apples at once, so as not to have to carry them about with us. The churchyard smells awfully good. It is the wild thyme that grows on the graves. This is another thing we did not know before we came into the country. Then the door of the church tower was ajar, and we all went up. It had always been locked before when we had tried it. We saw the ringer's loft, where the ends of the bell ropes hang down with long furry handles to them, like great caterpillars, some red and some blue and white, but we did not pull them. And then we went up to where the bells are, very big and dusty among large dirty beams, and 4 windows with no glass, only shutters like Venetian blinds, but they won't pull up. There were heaps of straw and sticks on the window ledges. We think they were owls' nests, but we did not see any owls. Then the tower stairs got very dark and narrow, and we went on up, and we came to a door and opened it suddenly, and it was like being hit in the face, the light was so sudden. And there we were on the top of the tower, which is flat, and people have cut their names on it, and a turret at one corner, and a low wall all round, up and down, like castle battlements. And we looked down and saw the roof of the church, and the leads, and the churchyard, and our garden, and the moat house, and the farm, and Mrs. Simpkin's cottage, looking very small, and other farms looking like toy things out of boxes, and we saw cornfields, and meadows, and pastures. Pasture is not the same thing as a meadow, whatever you may think. And we saw the tops of trees and hedges looking like a map of the United States, and villages, and a tower that did not look very far away, standing by itself on the top of a hill. Alice pointed to it and said, "What's that?" "It's not a church," said Noel, "because there's no churchyard. Perhaps it's a tower of mystery that covers the entrance to a subterranean vault with treasure in it." Dicky said subterranean fiddlestick, and a waterworks more likely. Alice thought that perhaps it was a ruined castle, and the rest of its crumbling walls were concealed by ivy, the growth of years. Oswald could not make up his mind what it was, so he said, "Let's go and see. We may as well go there as anywhere." So we got down out of the church tower and dusted ourselves and set off.
The Tower of Mystery showed quite plainly from the road, now that we knew where to look for it, because it was on top of a hill. We began to walk, but the tower did not seem to get any nearer, and it was very hot. So we sat down in a meadow where there was a stream in the ditch and ate the snack. We drank the pure water from the brook out of our hands, because there was no farm to get milk at just there, and it was too much fag to look for one, and besides we thought we might as well save the sixpence. Then we started again, and still the tower looked as far off as ever. Denny began to drag his feet, though he had bought a walking stick which none of the rest of us had, and said, "I wish a cart would come along, we might get a lift." He knew all about getting lifts, of course, from having been in the country before. He's not quite the white mouse we took him for at first. Of course, when you live in Lewisham or Blackheath you learn other things. If you asked for a lift in Lewisham High Street, your only reply would be jeers. We sat down on a heap of stones and decided that we would ask for a lift from the next cart, whichever way it was going. It was while we were waiting that Oswald found out about plantain seeds being good to eat. When the sound of wheels came, we remarked with joy that the cart was going towards the Tower of Mystery. It was a cart a man was going to fetch a pig home in. Denny said, "I say, you might give us a lift, will you?" The man, who was going for the pig, said, "What, all that little lot?" But he winked at Alice, and we saw that he meant to aid us on our way. So we climbed up, and he whipped up the horse and asked us where we were going. He was a kindly old man with a face like a walnut shell, and white hair and beard like a jack-in-the-box. "We want to go to the tower," Alice said. "Is it a ruin or not?" "It ain't no ruin," the man said. "No fear of that. The man what built it, he left so much a year to be spent on repairing of it. Money that might have put bread in honest folks' mouths." We asked if it was a church then, or not. "Church?" he said. "Not it. It's more of a tombstone from all I can make out. They do say there was a curse on him that built it, and he wasn't to rest in earth or sea. So he's buried halfway up the tower, if you can call it buried." "Can you go up it?" Oswald asked. "Lord love you, yes. A fine view from the top, they say. I've never been up myself, though I've lived in sight of it, man and boy, these 63 years, come harvest." Alice asked whether you had to go past the dead and buried person to get to the top of the tower, and could you see the coffin? "No, no," the man said. "That's all hid away behind a slab of stone, that is, with reading on it. You've got no call to be afraid, missy. It's daylight all the way up, but I wouldn't go there after dark, so I wouldn't. It's always open, day and night, and they say tramps sleep there now and again. Anyone who likes can sleep there, but it wouldn't be me." We thought that it would not be us either, but we wanted to go more than ever, especially when the man said, "My own great uncle of the mother's side, he was one of the masons that set up the stone slab. Before then it was thick glass, and you could see the dead man lying inside as he'd left it in his will. He was lying there in a glass coffin with his best clothes, blue satin and silver, my uncle said, such as was all the go in his day, with his wig on and his sword beside him, what he used to wear. My uncle said his hair had grown out from under his wig and his beard was down to the toes of him. My uncle, he always upheld that the dead man was no deader than you and me, but was in a sort of fit, a transit, I think they call it, and looked for him to waken into life again some day. But the doctor said not. It was only something done to him like Pharaoh in the Bible before he was buried." Alice whispered to Oswald that we shouldn't be late for tea, and wouldn't it be better to go back now directly? But he said, "If you're afraid, say so, and you needn't come in anyway, but I'm going in." The man who was going for the pig put us down at a gate quite near the tower. At least it looked so until we began to walk again. We thanked him, and he said, "Quite welcome," and drove off. We were rather quiet going through the wood. What we had heard made us very anxious to see the tower, all except Alice, who would keep talking about tea, though not a greedy girl by nature. None of the others encouraged her, but Oswald thought himself that we had better be home before dark. As we went up the path through the wood, we saw a poor wayfarer with dusty bare feet sitting on the bank. He stopped us and said he was a sailor, and asked for a trifle to help him to get back to his ship. I did not like the look of him much myself, but Alice said, "Oh, the poor man, do let's help him, Oswald." So we held a hurried council and decided to give him the milk sixpence. Oswald had it in his purse, and he had to empty the purse into his hand to find the sixpence, for that was not all the money he had by any means. Noel said afterwards that he saw the wayfarer's eyes fasten greedily upon the shining pieces as Oswald returned them to his purse. Oswald has to own that he purposely let the man see that he had more money, so the man may not feel shy about accepting so large a sum as sixpence. The man blessed our kind hearts, and we went on.
The sun was shining very brightly, and the Tower of Mystery did not look at all like a tomb when we got to it. The bottom story was on arches, all open, and ferns and things grew underneath. There was a round stone stair going up the middle. Alice began to gather ferns while we went up, but when we had called out to her that it was as the pig man had said, and daylight all the way up, she said, "All right, I'm not afraid. I'm only afraid of being late home," and came up after us. And perhaps, though not downright manly truthfulness, this was as much as you could expect from a girl. There were holes in the little tower of the staircase to let light in. At the top of it was a thick door with iron bolts. We shot these back, and it was not fear but caution that made Oswald push open the door so very slowly and carefully, because, of course, a stray dog or cat might have got shut in there by accident, and it would have startled Alice very much if it had jumped out on us. When the door was opened we saw that there was no such thing. It was a room with 8 sides. Denny says it is the shape called octogenarian, because a man named Octavius invented it. There were 8 large arched windows with no glass, only stonework, like in churches. The room was full of sunshine, and you could see the blue sky through the windows, but nothing else because they were so high up. It was so bright we began to think the pig man had been kidding us. Under one of the windows was a door. We went through, and there was a little passage and then a turret-twisting stair like in the church, but quite light with windows. When we had gone some way up this we came to a sort of landing, and there was a block of stone let into the wall, polished. Denny said it was Aberdeen graphite, with gold letters cut in it. It said,
"Here lies the body of Mr. Richard Ravenel, born 1720, died 1779.
and a verse of poetry.
Here lie I between earth and sky, think upon me, dear passer-by, and you who do my tombstone see, be kind to say a prayer for me.
How horrid, Alice said. Do let's go home. We may as well go to the top, Dicky said, just to say we've been. And Alice is no funk, so she agreed, though I could see she did not like it. Up at the top it was like the top of the church tower, only octogenarian in shape instead of square. Alice got all right there, because you cannot think much about ghosts and nonsense when the sun is shining bang down on you at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you can see red farm roofs between the trees, and the safe white roads with people in carts like black ants crawling. It was very jolly. But we felt we ought to be getting back, because tea is at 5, and we could not hope to find lifts both ways. So we started to go down. Dicky went first, then Oswald, then Alice, and H.O. had just stumbled over the top step and saved himself by Alice's back, which nearly upset Oswald and Dicky, when the hearts of all stood still, and then went on by leaps and bounds, like the good work in missionary magazines. For down below us, in the tower where the man whose beard grew down to his toes after he was dead was buried, there was a noise, a loud noise, and it was like a door being banged and bolts fastened. We tumbled over each other to get back into the open sunshine on the top of the tower, and Alice's hand got jammed between the edge of the doorway and H.O.'s boot. It was bruised black and blue, and another part bled, but she did not notice it till long after. We looked at each other, and Oswald said in a firm voice, at least I hope it was, "What was that?" "He has wakened up," Alice said. "Oh, I know he has. Of course there is a door for him to get out by when he wakes. He'll come up here. I know he will." Dicky said, and his voice was not at all firm. I noticed that at the time. "It doesn't matter if he's alive." "Unless he's come to life a raving lunatic," Noel said, and we all stood with our eyes on the doorway of the turret and held our breath to hear. But there was no more noise. Then Oswald said, and nobody ever put it in the Golden Deed book, though they own that it was brave and noble of him, he said, "Perhaps it was only the wind blowing one of the doors to. I'll go down and see, if you will, Dick." Dicky only said, "The wind doesn't shoot bolts." "A bolt from the blue," said Denny to himself, looking up at the sky. His father is a sub-editor. He had gone very red, and he was holding on to Alice's hand. Suddenly he stood up quite straight and said, "I'm not afraid. I'll go and see." This was afterwards put in the Golden Deed book. It ended in Oswald and Dicky and Denny going. Denny went first because he said he would rather, and Oswald understood this and let him go. If Oswald had pushed first, it would have been like Sir Lancelot refusing to let a young knight win his spurs. Oswald took good care to go second himself, though. The others never understood this. You don't expect it from girls, but I did think Father would have understood without Oswald telling him, which of course he never could. We all went slowly.
At the bottom of the turret stairs we stopped short, because the door there was bolted fast and would not yield to shoves, however desperate and united. Only now somehow we felt that Mr Richard Ravenel was all right and quiet, but that someone had done it for a lark, or perhaps not known about anyone being up there. So we rushed up, and Oswald told the others in a few hasty but well-chosen words, and we all leaned over between the battlements and shouted, "Hi, you there!" Then, from under the arches of the quite downstairs part of the tower, a figure came forth, and it was the sailor who had had our milk sixpence. He looked up, and he spoke to us. He did not speak loud, but he spoke loud enough for us to hear every word quite plainly. He said, "Drop that." Oswald said, "Drop what?" He said, "That row." Oswald said, "Why?" He said, "Because if you don't I'll come up and make you, and pretty quick too, so I tell you." Dicky said, "Did you bolt the door?" The man said, "I did so, my young cock." Alice said, and Oswald wished to goodness she had held her tongue, because he saw right enough the man was not friendly, "Oh, do come and let us out, do please." While she was saying it, Oswald suddenly saw that he did not want the man to come up, so he scurried down the stairs because he thought he had seen something on the door on the top side, and sure enough there were 2 bolts, and he shot them into their sockets. This bold act was not put into the Golden Deed book, because when Alice wanted to, the others said it was not good of Oswald to think of this, but only clever. I think sometimes, in moments of danger and disaster, it is as good to be clever as it is to be good. But Oswald would never demean himself to argue about this. When he got back, the man was still standing staring up. Alice said, "Oh, Oswald, he says he won't let us out unless we give him all our money, and we might be here for days and days, and all night as well." No one knows where we are to come and look for us. Oh, do let's give it to him all." She thought the lion of the English nation, which does not know when it is beaten, would be ramping in her brother's breast. But Oswald kept calm. He said, "All right," and he made the others turn out their pockets. Denny had a bad shilling with a head on both sides, and 3 halfpence. H.O. had a halfpenny. Noel had a French penny, which is only good for chocolate machines at railway stations. Dicky had 10pence halfpenny, and Oswald had a 2-shilling piece of his own that he was saving up to buy a gun with. Oswald tied the whole lot up in his handkerchief, and, looking over the battlements, he said, "You are an ungrateful beast. We gave you 6pence freely of our own will." The man did look a little bit ashamed, but he mumbled something about having his living to get. Then Oswald said, "Here you are, catch," and he flung down the handkerchief with the money in it. The man muffed the catch, butter-fingered idiot, but he picked up the handkerchief and undid it, and when he saw what was in it he swore dreadfully, the cad. "Look here," he called out, "this won't do, young shaver. I want those there shiners I seen in your purse. Come, chuck 'em along." Then Oswald laughed. He said, "I shall know you again anywhere, and you'll be put in prison for this. Here are the shiners." And he was so angry he chucked down purse and all. The shiners were not real ones, but only card counters that looked like sovereigns on one side. Oswald used to carry them in his purse so as to look affluent. He does not do this now. When the man had seen what was in the purse, he disappeared under the tower, and Oswald was glad of what he had done about the bolts, and he hoped they were strong as the ones on the other side of the door. They were. We heard the man kicking and pounding at the door, and I am not ashamed to say that we were all holding on to each other very tight. I am proud, however, to relate that nobody screamed or cried. After what appeared to be long years, the banging stopped, and presently we saw the brute going away among the trees. Then Alice did cry, and I do not blame her. Then Oswald said, "It's no use. Even if he's undone the door he may be in ambush. We must hold on here till somebody comes." Then Alice, speaking chokily because she had not quite done crying, "Let's wave a flag." By the most fortunate accident she had on one of her Sunday petticoats, though it was Monday. This petticoat is white. She tore it out at the gathers, and we tied it to Denny's stick and took turns to wave it. We had laughed at his carrying a stick before, but we were very sorry now that we had done so. And the tin dish the Lent pie was baked in, we polished with our handkerchiefs and moved it about in the sun so the sun might strike on it and signal our distress to some of the outlying farms. This was perhaps the most dreadful adventure that had ever happened to us. Even Alice had now stopped thinking of Mr. Richard Ravenel and thought only of the lurker in ambush. We all felt our desperate situation keenly. I must say Denny behaved like anything but a white mouse. When it was the others' turn to wave, he sat on the leads of the tower and held Alice's and Noel's hands and said poetry to them, yards and yards of it. By some strange fatality it seemed to comfort them. It wouldn't have me. He said the Battle of the Baltic and Gray's Elegy right through, though I think he got it wrong in places, and the Revenge, and Macaulay's thing about Lars Porsena and the 9 gods. And when it was his turn he waved like a man. I will try not to call him a white mouse any more. He was a brick that day and no mouse. The sun was low in the heavens, and we were sick of waving and very hungry when we saw a cart in the road below. We waved like mad and shouted, and Denny screamed exactly like a railway whistle, a thing none of us had known before that he could do. And the cart stopped, and presently We saw a figure with a white beard among the trees. It was our pig man. We bellowed the awful truth to him, and when he had taken it in, he thought at first we were kidding. He came up and let us out. He had got the pig. Luckily it was a very small one, and we were not particular. Denny and Alice sat in the front of the cart with the pig man, and the rest of us got in with the pig, and the man drove us right home. You may think we talked it over on the way. Not us. We went to sleep among the pig, and before long the pig man stopped and got us to make room for Alice and Denny. There was a net over the cart. I was never so sleepy in my life, though it was not more than bedtime. Generally, after anything exciting, you are punished. But this could not be, because we had only gone for a walk, exactly as we were told.
There was a new rule made, though. No walks except on the high roads, and we were always to take Pincher and either Lady the deerhound or Martha the bulldog. We generally hate rules, but we did not mind this one.
Father gave Denny a gold pencil case because he was first to go down into the tower. Oswald does not grudge Denny this, though some might think he deserved at least a silver one. But Oswald is above such paltry jealousies.
End of chapter 4.